Hello everybody. It's white to play in this position. What should white do? That's a nice introductory position for us to start our lesson today. Just take your time. Can you see a promising idea instantly from this position? What are you seeing? What is going on in this position? And this will give a segue to our main discussion today. We are discussing the misconceptions about grandmasters in chess. I'm sure many of you have similar presumptions about grandmasters. So we'll debunk some of these ideas today that is approved by general public. And I will also show you some scientific evidence and data that support those claims. Okay, but this position is already quite nice, and I will come back to it very, very soon after introducing you today's episode. Yeah, so let's briefly look at those 5 things, 5 misconceptions about grandmasters. We'll be talking about these 5 points today, folks, one by one, and I hope to convince you today that some of those presumptions are simply wrong. For example, we'll see that grandmasters don't always see all possible moves and variations, or they don't always make brilliant moves on each turn. They, of course, sometimes commit blunders, and they don't memorize every possible opening variation, and they are usually not geniuses. They could be geniuses, but that doesn't necessarily true. That every single grandmaster must be a genius, that's also probably wrong. Okay, that's a final controversial subject that I will probably discuss in some depth. But let's start with this first misconception, that grandmasters see all possible moves and variations. To tell you more about this misconception, I need to introduce the term chunk in chess. This is one such chunk that is available to a master, strong player. Good knight versus bad bishop scenario. Amateurs are seeing random pawns and pieces in this position, while masters, they see the entire board as a single chunk with an evaluation, right? They look at this position and they say, we have a beautiful knight on an outpost versus a bad bishop over here, thus white is better. That's the function of these chunks. That's like unit of information that could be encoded together. Analogy with language, folks, right? When you learn new language, you start with recognizing individual letters, right? Let's say THA becomes D for you, right? But as you grow those chunks, as you accumulate more of such chunks, then the entire sentences can be encoded as a single chunk. For example, right, to be or not to be, that is the question. As you grow stronger, as you gain more expertise in learning a new language, then this entire sentence can become available for you, and you can link information to that sentence. The whole sentence becomes a meaningful whole and encoded as such. So once you understand this entire position is a single chunk, good knight versus terrible bishop, you can apply it, you can access this chunk in any position. And for example, if I go back to the initial position and ask you what the right move is for white, then you'll probably tell me that bishop g5 is a good move, because my idea is to simply remove the knight and get my knight on this beautiful d5 outpost, right? In fact, white achieves the plan nicely, black cannot do anything about that, and you achieve your goal, right? So grandmasters, they are great in making those mini plans, in establishing those dreams, establishing those dream positions, right? So this position is a perfect illustration of what masters, first of all, evaluate correctly, right? That resulting position, and they take action to reach their goal. In cognitive science, we call these productions, right? Whenever you see an outpost on d5, exchange the right pieces and establish an eternal knight on d5, right? You see, chunks can be connected to information. Action, right? I'm combining that chunk, I'm connecting it to certain actions. So masters, they don't see all possible lines and variations. They are not machines. They are great in finding those mini plans that achieve their goal. For example, here, they have a dream, knight on d5, and they engage in this mini plan, exchange mini plan, to achieve their goal. It's black to play in this position, folks. Please take your time, and let's see if you can find a good looking plan for black in this position. Okay? It was Adrian de Groot who wrote this book, his PhD thesis, on thought and choice in chess in 1946. He worked with so many super grandmasters, Alekhine, Keres, Tartakov, and so on, and he compared their thought process with lower rated players, candidate masters, and so on. And his findings was very surprising. What separates a grandmaster is not their search depth, how many moves in depth they can calculate. But what separates them is their extremely fast recognition and find of strong-looking continuations. It's their quick judgment, quick and accurate judgment of the positions. Their quick evaluations was amazing. What he said, de Groot, was this. That's a beautiful saying. He says, what a strong grandmaster sees in 5 seconds, candidate master need to spend 15 minutes, right? The understanding of a super GM in only 5 seconds is almost the same as if you give 15 minutes to a candidate master. So this was a very surprising finding, you see. It's not that grandmasters, they calculate, they visualize, they see all the moves in depth. They surely can. They can understand the position and they understand, for example, whether a longer search, larger search is needed. Then they can go deeper, obviously. But usually, what separates grandmasters is their instant access to the gist of the position and good moves coming naturally to them. And the explanation is, of course, this, right? They have accumulated so many of those chunks and patterns I just showed you guys. According to some estimations, you need to learn maybe 200,000 chunks, such chunks in chess, to reach a grandmaster level. And that's exactly why it takes time, right? That requires long study to learn those patterns. The good thing is this: once you learn those chunks, you can have easy access, right? Once you learn those chunks, just like knight d5 idea, right? It comes naturally to you. You can find those ideas instantly in a bullet game. That's also why, by the way, super grandmasters are great in bullet and blitz chess, right? They don't need to search so much time. They need to spend so much time to find the right moves. They come natural to them. Almost like, you know, when you see, or like Messi, take Messi in football, right? I mean, Messi, when he recognizes a certain situation, he knows exactly what to do, right? He doesn't think and deliberately ponder about the next move. The good-looking actions come natural to Messi. It's the same in chess, right? Those patterns, those chunks, because Messi has trained all these years in similar situations. He knows exactly what to do depending on the defensive setup and so on, right? It's the same with chess grandmasters. Going back to this position, Black is in trouble because of all the weaknesses, right? There are so many weaknesses. Our bishops are limited. Look at those bishops. White has good pieces, good bishop on e3, plus White has plans such as knight a4 to put more pressure on c5. So a master understands these long-term factors instantly, who is better in the long run, and they find this move relatively quickly, rook d4, a typical exchange sacrifice idea. That's more or less the only way for Black to fight, because you're blunting this bishop. Now you actually defend your c5 pawn, plus you want to double up your rooks, and if White takes, then you take probably the e pawn to open up your bishop and to start an attack on the king's side, right? You also gain this protected pass pawn on d4. For example, after h5, g3, h4, Black gains counterplay on the king's side. Black changed the natural course of this game. And this information, this move, this idea comes very naturally to a grandmaster, right? If you give this position to a grandmaster, I'm pretty sure one of his candidates or her candidates would be rook d4. Why? Because he's seen similar patterns before, right? There are so many classical games that highlight that in this pawn structure, right, you can use your double pawns as strength to change the natural course of the game. It's Black to play, folks, in this position. We are searching for a good move for Black. Just to see that White wants to open up some blinds on the king's side. The kings have castle on opposite flanks. So what should Black do? Here, again, I'm testing your pattern knowledge. If you know this pattern, I'm sure the idea will come to you very naturally. To sum up what I just said so far, what separates grandmasters mostly lie in their perception. They perceive the chessboard differently than amateurs, and good ideas and good candidates come to their mind naturally because of their accumulation of hundreds and thousands of chess chunks that is stored in their working memory. Okay, So in this position, you're a great player if you found the move g6, and that's a typical chunk to be remembered, padlock formation, which ensures that the king side will remain closed, right? If white goes, for example, g5, you go h5, and everything is locked up. White cannot open up lines to attack against your king. And if they go h5, obviously we go g5, again, keeping everything closed, securing our king, and our attack on the queen side will start next, right? So you basically reach your positional goal of closing down the king side and stopping the enemy attack, and then you go back to what you do. You don't find this move by randomly searching and calculating lines, right? This comes to you as a natural orientation phase. Once you have the right orientation of the position, and once you know those patterns, the padlock formation, that's immensely helpful here. If you already know this pattern, right? You see, the whole process will be much more efficient if you already seen this pattern before, right? This tension between these 4 pawns. If you've never seen this pattern, yeah, it will take more search, more calculation, and more problem-solving efforts and so on to maybe find this resource. But you see the efficiency of this, that to a master, this is just Messi, right? Messi sees the ball, Messi sees the defensive setup, and he knows exactly what to do in that position. Let's talk about the second point. They make brilliant moves on each turn. That's also a misconception, and I can go back to the first position to describe to you why this is not the case, right? Would you call this move, for example, g6, a brilliant move? No. It looks like a much more innocent move. It looks like a move that looks boring. It's not looking exciting at all. But then you see the main point of this move. This move makes sure that black reaches their goal on the king side. But what is black's goal on the king side? It's to keep the position closed. Why? Because the kings have cast on opposite flanks. You see, for a master, it's mostly about this orientation phase and the understanding of the essence of the position. What this position is about, it's also about, of course, looking at the opponent's last move and identifying all the threats that they are facing, positional threats and tactical threats they are facing at all times. Their floor is high, grandmasters. Yeah, they don't miss such opportunity. They don't blunder such moves to the opponent, for example. But can we call this a brilliant move? No, it's a much more standard, stock standard response, in fact, for black that makes sure black reaches their goal. And if black reaches their goal on the king side, well, a disaster is waiting for white in the long run, right? So that's also about this. Masters know exactly when they should strike and when they should play slowly. They know exactly when to strike and when to wait, right? They know exactly how to change the character of the game, just like in the other example. We can go back to that position again, folks. Do you remember this position, right? For a master, it's obvious. If you wait, white will punch you, right? So master refused to wait in this position because waiting, for example, if you wait with h5, they will go knight a4, voila. Long-term advantages belong to white, and if you defend your pawn, comes queen f2, and how can you defend this pawn on c5 anymore? It's impossible. You see, master, when you look at a position like this, they see that waiting doesn't help black, so black must fight using some dynamics, some surprising ideas to change the natural course of the game. And rook d4 is a great move, but can you call this move a brilliant move? I don't think so, because rook d4 is also a stock standard exchange sacrifice idea in similar situations that is available to a master, because master has learned this chunk at some point in their life. Let's talk about the third point. They don't commit blunders. Well, even the grandmasters commit blunders, folks. I'm sure you've seen similar examples before, but let me show you a game of Nigel Short. He was playing with white pieces. After f6 check, Short has to decide, should we take on f6? Should we drop back the king? What should we do? Or should we go to e6? You tell me. You can stop the video and please decide on these 4 moves, please. Well, Nigel Short, the classical game, played king e6 and allowed, you tell me, allowed bishop c8, mate. The king got mated on e6. A grandmaster blundered the mate in 1 in a classical game. I will show you one more huge blunder from Tigran Petrosyan. He was playing against Bronstein in this game. Bronstein just went knight f5. Can you tell me, please, folks, what this move threatens? Does white face any threat right now? because Petrosyan thought there is no threat, and he went knight g5, and he lost his queen after knight takes d6. Great Petrosyan in a very important game in a very good position. If queen c7, white is much, much better. He doesn't see a single threat on his queen, and he blundered the game like this. Incredible. So grandmasters, they are humans. They sometimes make such amazing looking blunders, but their floor is much higher than us mortals. Their floor is much higher than amateurs. If you look at amateur games, club player games, these kind of blunders happen much more frequently. I will show you a couple of examples. This position is one of my students' games. He played beautiful chess until he comes to this point, dominating pieces, amazing knight on d3, extra material, extra exchange, everything was perfect, okay? So the opponent was desperate, he took on d3 and recaptured with the bishop. My question is this: what should black do, folks? What should black do in this position? Because my student, he simply took on c5 and allowed, you tell me, bishop c4, and the queen was lost. After playing one of the most beautiful games in his life, he lost this game as a single blunder. Why? Because he probably only perceived this move as a single recapture. He didn't ask himself the most important question in chess of whether he's facing a threat right now. What's the opponent's next move? This process is automatized for grandmasters, I can assure you, right? Unless there's a huge mental hiccup, this is almost never missed, right? Grandmasters, they always look at the opponent's threat, move after move, every single move, right? So that's one of the biggest, let's say, separators. And this kind of mistakes happen all the time in club players. Their floor is not high. And you see, they keep losing games like this after playing beautiful strategic chess. Now, what should black do, folks? Obviously, b5, right? You stop bishop c4, and black obtains a winning advantage, 2 extra exchanges. Life looks good. Let's do some retrieval practice. In this position, black is clearly winning with extra queen, right? Huge material advantage, but white goes h5. Okay? Please stop the video and find a good move for black. Please use this process that I just mentioned to you, right? Whenever your opponent makes a move, you must always ask yourself on whether you're facing a threat right now. What's their next move if you don't make a move right now? Yes, their next move is h takes g6, checkmate, right? So yes, you're up a queen, but you're facing an enormous threat. Can we take on h5? You tell me. No, because if you take, then rook takes h5 also leads to mate. Can you see it? So, what should black do, folks? Great. You're a great player if you play g5, because this rook is shut down out of the game, and now you basically play queen c2 next and crash through the position. You see, if you slip in a single moment in chess, you can lose any position. That's why chess is one of the most cruel sports out there, right? A single mistake can nullify all your advantages, all your great moves that you played previously. So grandmasters, they fixed these problems when they were kids, most probably. So it's very, 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 very rare for a grandmaster. It's almost unimaginable with an extra queen to lose a game like this in this position, okay? Unless that's like an ultra bullet game or something. Yeah, you don't see this occasionally. That's why it ends up in textbooks when Petrosyan hangs a queen. Let's talk about the fourth misconception, that grandmaster memorize every possible opening variation. Well, they surely memorize so many moves. According to one estimate, a grandmaster, on average, must have memorized 100,000 opening moves, okay? We have to rely on the slow and evolutionary progress of opening theory development, guys. We need to memorize opening moves, obviously. But there will be inevitably a moment where you don't follow the theory anymore, yeah? You need to leave the theory at some point, and then you need to rely on those general middle game patterns, typical recurrent patterns, for example, piece exchanges, pawn breaks, endgame transitions, pawn structure issues, and so on. Yeah, so you need much more thorough opening study that you want to connect opening, middle game, and the endgame. I will show you exactly how this works. Let's imagine that you're a French defense player, right? French defense, the pawn on e6, pawn on d5, this pawn structure. You need to be able to identify your bad pieces, and your middle game strategy should revolve around which piece to trade and why. For example, if I ask you to pick up a bad piece in this position and try to exchange it off, what would you say? Well, I'm sure if you're a French player, you could tell me that it's the bishop on c8. That's a terrible piece, right? That's a terrible French bishop. So one of the typical and recurrent middle game ideas in French is to be able to exchange off this guy. So can you formulate a good plan for black given this orientation phase? Congratulations! If you found the move b6, very simple idea of bishop a6 and trading off your bad piece for white's good bishop. It's a very simple and very powerful operation in the French. And if they insist of stopping your idea, what should black do? Can you tell me? Yes, a5, and we insist on the trade. We really want to exchange off our terrible French bishop. You see, simple chess in fact. You don't need to calculate 25 moves in depth. Again, we are engaging in a mini plan to reach our goal. Another typical French middle game idea, folks. It's black to play in this position. Please stop the video and think for yourself. I will give you the first prompt. You're facing some issues on the king side, right? There are some attacking ideas for white. Maybe the rook left, knight g5, bishop g6. It looks dangerous. Given this orientation phase, can you maybe tell me a good looking idea for black? Congratulations if you found the typical exchange sacrifice in French, rook takes f3. Folks, this is a stock standard idea in the French defense, and if you're a French player, you should get yourself familiar with those recurrent middle game ideas, right? Now you actually weaken the white king, you're attacking instead of defending. That attacking knight disappeared from the board, the whole king side has been weakened, and you took the sting out of the white's attack. So now I can explain to you, right, why this was great. A multi-purpose exchange sacrifice. It's a very recurrent theme in the French, and this should be studied by heart. For example, after rook e3, bishop b7, we have great pieces. Queen h4 are ideas. Maybe queen f6 is an idea, followed by knight f4, right, rook f8. It's black who is having a beautiful game, and white is the one who's defending. And if they go king h1, we go queen h4, and suddenly, right, knight g3 followed by queen takes h6 becomes a huge threat. We came to the final and maybe the controversial point, folks. The misconception is that grandmasters are geniuses. Well, that's not always the case. Let's look at the scientific evidence. And while we are looking at that, we'll also look at a game between Topalov and Viswanathan Anand. This was the final game of the World Championship match in 2010 between Topalov and Anand. I chose Anand because to my mind he's a genius. At least he's a very smart person that maybe we can think about Anand while we are discussing these subjects, folks, okay? So Anand was playing with the black pieces here and Topalov just went e4. I want you to again look at the position as a whole and try to formulate a good plan for black, a good idea for black. That's a critical moment. And Anand made a very surprising and strong move here in this position. The entire plan was beautiful. Again, just think for yourself first. I will slowly show you the moves until the point that Anand reached a winning position from here. Okay? Going back to intelligence, guys, obviously there's mixed evidence on this. That deliberate practice, when you talk about deliberate practice, okay, it says no matter the intelligence, what really is needed to gain an expertise in chess is strenuous effort and long studies, maybe 10,000 hours or like 10 years of deliberate practice, right? So the proponents of the deliberate practice approach sort of undermines the value of talent and intelligence, right? Their claim seems to be that regardless of talent or intelligence, if they put their heart and soul into chess training, if they're serious for 10 years, then anyone can become an expert and grandmaster, right? It's like a typical nature and nurture debate. In fact, it's never either or, right? There's always a combination. And that's also what seems to be happening in terms of scientific evidence here. To highlight this nature and nurture debate, I like to think about chess expertise as three big dimensions, right? There's practice, there is intelligence, and there's performance, right? You practice, your intelligence is a factor, and your performance in your chess games also affect how much practice you do. There's always feedback loops, and that's the key, right? They are never independent. For example, if you perform nicely, this will give you huge motivation and passion, maybe, to practice more, right? If you're intelligent, if you're starting chess and you're a very bright person, maybe your results will be higher, and this will give you great motivation to pursue chess as a hobby. In fact, there's one study that found this, that for young players, for kids, and also for weaker players, there was a clear correlation between intelligence, those parameters for intelligence, for example, short-term memory, verbal ability, and processing speed, like those correlates of intelligence, that correlated nicely with chess performance and ratings, right? But as you grow stronger, as you reach master levels, that disappears. That correlation disappears, right? So if you only look at the grandmasters, we cannot say that higher rated grandmaster must be more intelligent than lower rated grandmaster. So this so far only holds for weaker players, amateurs, and kids. So keep that in mind, because this, right, is like a butterfly effect. Those small differences at the beginning can lead to big effects in the long run, because we are talking about feedback loops. We are talking about dynamic nature, because there's also time element, right? Time is passing and these three dimensions are changing. For example, performance, practice, and intelligence, right? There's always intertwined, those three. Think about it like a spaghetti model, as Fernand Gobet has put this nicely in his book, The Psychology of Chess. He came up with this model of spaghetti model. There is always feedback loops, there are always interactions. So nature and nurture, they're always intertwined, okay? Let's go back to this position, folks. In this position, Anand sees that if he waits, Topalov will organize beautifully. He will attack the weakness on c5, he will get his knight to e3, that stops f5 break, and then long-term factors favor white. Just like in the first position I saw you today, right? The exchange sacrifice, the rook d4. It's a similar dynamics and statics. Waiting doesn't help black. Waiting only helps white in this position, right? That's exactly why Topalov made the move e4, because he wants to slowly get the knight to e3 and have a beautiful and long-term grind on the queen side. Thus, Anand sees that he must play dynamically. And can you guess Anand's move, folks? Bam! He goes f5 and awakens the bishop and weakens the white king. Look at the timely nature of this pawn break. Masters, again, through years of study, they understand the critical moment, right? They sense which position is critical in chess. In those moments, they take more time and they really find the best move in the position. Here, that's a beautiful dynamical move. E takes f5. And here, of course, Anand goes e4 and activates the bishop. The white king is not safe and black gets beautiful counterplay. Here, Topalov very quick takes on e4. That's a huge mistake, because after queen takes, you already understand, right? The king on h3 will not be safe. And look at this battery. So, after the move king h3, you can take a step back and find a great move for black. There are two actually good moves, but let's see how well you can do it. Of course, our goal is to attack the exposed king on h3. How do we do that, folks? Going back to the scientific evidence. It's not only about deliberate practice, right? One study found that actually there's a huge difference between players in reaching master levels. Some players needed 10 times more, even more, 15 times more hours to reach the candidate master level compared to the fastest player. That's enormous amount of variation, folks, right? If it was only about hours of practice, deliberate practice on chess, then you will not expect this kind of variation in the results. Then there are cases like Magnus Carlsen. It took Magnus much less time to reach the grandmaster level compared to some of his peers, right? So maybe Magnus is quicker and faster in learning chess chunks, and over time, since you need to learn 200,000 chess chunks, even more, this will have a huge difference in the long run, right? You can understand it can start with something small and it can grow tremendously over time. You need approximately around 8 seconds to learn a new chunk. But once you learn the chunk, the access is very quick, right? In milliseconds, you will have access to that chunk, but learning those chunks is time consuming. And maybe Magnus can learn those chunks not in 8 seconds, but let's say in 6 seconds or 7 seconds, right? That can make a huge difference in the long run. That's one way how intelligence or talent, in this case, talent for chess or chess chunks can have an influence later on. Another misconception is that chess expertise or grandmasters, right, they can use their skills in other domains. That's not the case. Chess knowledge doesn't transfer to other fields. There is no scientific finding or sound scientific results on this yet, right? Just because you have great memory for chess positions doesn't mean that your memory for other random stuff in life is also great, right? Just because you're great in controlling your impulses on a chessboard doesn't mean that you're also great in marshmallow tasks, for example, in other domains. Having said that, I don't undervalue the value of practice, folks. There are also so many studies that found that deliberate practice explains great variance in chess skill. It's not that it's the whole story, right? Deliberate practice is not the whole story. There are also other dimensions like talent, intelligence, passion, and motivation. Guys, think about chess, right? Passion and motivation is a huge thing. I have a huge passion for the game, so I can spend the entire day just studying chess. And if I do that in the long run, right, my performance will increase. So they're always intertwined. And if my performance increases, I have even more motivation to study chess. You see the feedback loop again? You see how complex the entire thing is? So you can't only say it's nature or nurture, right? It's always a combination. To summarize today's session, folks, let's see what Anand did in his position. Rook d4 was directly winning. Congratulations if you came up with the move Rook d4, creating a big threat of Queen g4, also hitting the knight on c4. That's a multi-purpose move. And after knight e3, can you see the next move? Bam, Queen e8, such a beautiful, lovely retreat. And now Queen h5 is a huge threat, and white really has no defense. After g4, h5, and the entire thing is collapsing, of course. They can't go g5, because if they do, can you tell me the next move? Queen e4, a beautiful attacking chess. Queen h4 is an irresistible threat. Black wins. Just look at the piece activity and look at how unsafe the white king is. So Topalov tried king h4, but Anand, after playing g5, take, he obtained a completely winning position after rook takes g4, and he went on to win the game in a nice fashion, and he kept his World Championship title. This was a crucial game in that World Championship match, and the genius Anand converted the game like this. Anand is very special because he was also, great from the early on with his bright mind, in amazing blitz skills and, just effortless play, basically. When I think about Anand, I think about his great intuition and great play in fast time controls. And to my mind, he's a very bright person. But as we discussed today, right, that's also not the whole story. Not every single grandmaster is genius. We cannot say that. There is no scientific evidence on that. And chess expertise doesn't really transfer to other domains in life. Having said that, intelligence surely helps, especially when you're beginning as a kid or when you're weaker. There's evidence for that. And then the entire process becomes much more dynamic. There are different elements, right? Passion, motivation, practice is huge. You need, again, at least 200,000 chunks to become a grandmaster, right? And requires time. If you think about a single chunk, you need to spend 8 seconds to learn. You can understand. You cannot become a grandmaster in the next year. It's impossible, right? It takes time. Although we're also living in good times, now we have more access to nice technologies like Chessable, other chess platforms that speed up this process, that makes us easier access, gives us easier access to learn the right chunks in chess that gives us the most benefit, right? And here we need more data when it comes to the right training techniques in chess, because there is no scientific evidence on this yet. Every coach will tell you something, do this, do that, but there is no scientific study yet comparing different techniques that give the highest rate of improvement. I will leave you folks with this chunk that we learned at the beginning of this video. Good knight versus bad bishop. And now you think about chess expertise as the accumulation of such chunks. But it's not only about pattern recognition. Obviously, our beautiful game also has other elements. Sometimes there are exceptions. You need to break some rules, right? You need to calculate when in doubt, right? You need to use your calculation skills to figure out in a concrete way what the position is about. You cannot only rely on your patterns you learned before, right? That's why chess is a beautiful game. It's a game of exceptions as well. So don't get me wrong. It's not only about the chunks, but chunks are a huge role, play a huge role in this entire story, folks. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give me a like and subscribe and check my Chessable courses. I will continue more of such videos, and please ask me anything. I'm actually inviting you to come up with some questions about expertise, cognitive science, and chess, and I'm very happy to make more videos about this subject, folks. Thank you so much.